Hi everyone, today we are going to discuss the poem Spelling by Margaret Atwood. This is a powerful poem that dives into the connection between words, identity, and especially the experiences of women. Now, I will walk you through it line by line so we can understand it together. Let's begin. So, the first stanza. My daughter plays on the floor with plastic letters, red, blue, and hard yellow, learning how to spelling, how to make spells. So, here, Atwood starts by describing something simple and familiar. What is that? Her daughter playing with plastic letters on the floor. She is learning to spell like many of you probably did when you were young. But then she adds on interesting twist with the phrase how to make spells. It is Atwood saying that when you spell you are creating something powerful. Words have that kind of strength. They can shape reality. That is what Atwood implies by saying how to make spells. Is it clear? Now, the next lines. I wonder how many women denied themselves daughters, closed themselves in rooms, drew the curtains so they could mainline words. Now, this is where Atwood shifts to a deeper reflection. She's thinking about all the women who didn't have children because they wanted to focus on their work, which means writing or creating. These women isolating themselves, shutting the world out just to dedicate their time to words. Here, in this lines, there is the usage of mainline words, which means words are a kind of lifeline for them, like they need it to survive. Is it clear? Now, next lines. A child is not a poem is not a child. There is no either or however. Here, Atwood is really direct. She is saying a child and a poem are in the same thing. You don't have to choose between them, they are not interchangeable. But then she adds, however. She is leaving room for something more. She is suggesting something more, like the story she is about to tell us. I return to the story of the woman caught in the war and in labor, her thighs tied together by the enemy so she could not give birth. This is actually a powerful and painful image. Atwood recalls a story of a woman who was in labor, but she couldn't give birth because her enemies tied her thighs together. It is a horrible way to think about how people can control or prevent something as natural and necessary as giving birth. It is a metaphor for how women's power, whether to create life or to create art, has often been violently controlled or suppressed. I hope this is clear to you. And now I'm moving to the next lines. Ancestress, the burning witch, her mouth covered by leather to strangle words. What does Atwood means here? She brings in the image of a witch being burned, her mouth covered so she can't speak. This is an echo of how women were persecuted in the past time. Okay, so women who spoke out, who were different or powerful, were silenced during the past. Do you see how Atwood is connecting this back to words and language? She is talking about how women's voices have been literally silenced throughout history. That is evidently described in these lines. And now, a word after a word after a word is power. This is one of the most important lines in the poem. She's saying that words, when used over and over, become powerful. Language gives you power, especially when you don't stop using it. The more you speak, the more power you build. It is like building a wall brick by brick. Word after word, you become stronger. That is what Atwood means here. at the point where language fails away, from the hot bones at the point where the rock breaks open and darkness flows out of it like blood. At the melting point of granite, when the bones know they are hollow, and the word splits and doubles and speaks the truth, and body itself becomes a mouth. This part actually seems a little complicated, but stay with me. I will clearly define to you. Atwood is using some very intense images here. She's describing what happens when language or the power of words is released. Can you picture it? Bonds that are hot and hollow, rocks breaking open, darkness flowing like blood. It is like the body itself becomes a voice, a mouth. When she is saying, what she is saying is that at the deepest level, words break through and they become the truth. It is a powerful transformation when words can no longer be held in and they just speak. And then Atwood reminds us this is a metaphor. It is not literal, but it feels real because the struggle to find and speak the truth can feel as intense as this imagery. How do you learn to spell blood, sky, and the sun? Your own name first, your first naming, your first name, your first word. Finally, Atwood brings us back to the act of learning. How do we learn to spell? She ties it to the most basic things. She's connecting that to the most basic things: blood, sky, and the sun. These are elemental. We know these are fundamental things. And it all starts with your own name. Learning to spell is deeply connected to your identity, which means your name, your first word. It is as if she is saying that learning to spell, which means learning to use words, is the first step in discovering who you are. That is your identity. Is it clear? So, this poem is much about how we are learning to spell. It's about the power of language, especially for women. It's about how words can be both a tool of creation and a tool of resistance. So, Atwood wants us to understand that language is very much powerful and it can be a way to express your identity and truth in a world that often tries to silence you, that often tries to silence women. Is it clear? So, if this is clear to you, please subscribe the channel and follow for more. Thank you.